traffic 10.4041 uniform, departing 11 for ascent.
Welcome to Soaring the Sky, a glider pilot podcast. Hello, my name is Chuck. This is episode 20. Today, our guest pilot, Sebastian Kawa, joins us from southern Poland. He is a second-generation glider pilot as well as a competition glider pilot and holds the most world champion titles in gliding history. He is also known for his book about soaring he wrote called Sky Full of Heat. When he's not flying, Sebastian is also a physician. Join us now for this exciting interview with Sebastian Kawa. Sebastian, thank you for taking your time to be on the podcast today. I know you're a very busy man, so welcome.
Thank you very much. Hello.
So when did your aviation adventure begin?
I think it's like in every gliding family. My father was a glider pilot, so I started very early. Just formally to start flying, you need to be 16 years old. But I think I had several occasions to at least sit in the plane or in the glider when I was 10 years old. And especially I remember one flight with my father in my home club now at Międzybrodzie Żywieckie in Poland, in Beskid Mountains. And it was old wooden glider, Bocian, and we flew in summer at maybe 2,500 meters, and I remember it was very cold there. And I paid especially attention to every whistle the glider was making, and it was a little bit scary for me, but I liked the tridimensional movements, and I remember it especially made a huge I was impressed when I could see the glider with the wheel down, and the wheel was not touching anything, and it was still hanging. Yeah, that was especially for me, and because it was quite busy that day in the air, so we could see many gliders, and remember this flight especially. So it was not especially long, but I started to fly officially as a student when I was 16 years old, because this was the official age for flying gliders in Poland. And so this is very normal, I think.
Where did your journey take you after that?
Actually, before I flew gliders, I was already involved in the sports. And there was always some activities in my school. We went to ski. And with some friends in Międzybrodzie, we started to sail in nearby lake. We were starting with Optimist boats. It's a little boat for kids, and that was a very successful club. So I learned to be a competitor in that age, and so that's probably the part of the story because why I was so successful from the beginning in gliding, because for me it was just a change of the media. Yeah, I already learned to be a competitor. I knew that it's not far from being the average to being on top. You just need to squeeze yourself a little bit more, do something a little bit better, and then you are in the lead. Yeah, that's so. But initially, I didn't fly in competitions. It took about 2 years before I went for Polish National Gliding Championships as a junior, because I was busy sailing in that moment. Yeah? But in one moment, it was about 80s. The gliding club was still active, and the sailing club, we just lost sponsor. Fiat factory was sold to Italians, and we didn't have for a moment sponsors. So in that moment, I should start to sail 470 instead of 420 as a senior and Olympic game boat. So not easily, but I changed in the media, and I started to officially participate in competitions in gliding. So it was after 2 years of flying in difficult terrain, because in mountains it's a little bit more difficult than flying in a flat country. So when I went to Leszno, which is an officially Polish capital of gliding, this competition for me, flying with these thermals, white thermals, strong thermals, it was much easier than in mountains. So I was very successful then, and I won this competition with a huge margin. And it started. From that moment, it was a reason to to start thinking of gliding more seriously. Up to now, it was just a fun for holidays, but then I started to fly in competitions, and it was more serious.
Sebastian, how do you prepare for a competition race?
In this moment, I think it's very important to be in the competition area at least 1 or 2 competitions earlier. Even if it's flat country, the hotspots are very, very stable, and to get to know them, it's very important. Of course, we have logs now. We can produce a map of hotspot and hot areas in a computer, but to know them exactly where it is on the ground, it's much, much better. So especially in mountains, if you fly in hilly terrain, going for a competition without spending at least 100 hours in this area, it's you have to be a hero to do it. It's not so easy then. Local pilots have such a big advantage in this moment that they can be average, and if they know where to fly, they fly quickly because they did it 100 times, and then they can overtake everybody. So those tricks in the mountains are very important. It's not only the technique you fly, it's also the knowledge of the terrain. So at least you have to be there. And then, of course, it's necessary to get used to your instruments in the glider. Now we have almost in each glider, we have the same instruments. The electronics is almost the same everywhere. The monopoly of the Helix is worldwide, so this is much easier now. But sometimes the settings of the vario or the behavior of the vario because of the tubes is a little bit different, and you need to get used to it. And of course, gliders are different with the characteristics of how the lift coefficient increases, how the glider responds to the stick. To the pull of the stick, and this is also necessary to get used to it. And if you feel attached to the glider, if you feel it very well, then it's much easier to find the core of the thermal. Then it's much easier to judge if you are flying in a good thermal or just an average or just a little gust, and then you don't make empty loops and don't lose time during the flight. Yeah. So this is several things you need to do before the competition. And of course, in my case, I often have to prepare the glider because I don't have my own glider. I rely on national team gliders, and they are very, very much used. Almost they don't stand. Everybody, all the time, somebody is flying in the competition with them. So before the real competition, I need to take care of this glider, especially about the surface of wings and smoothness of. We have a common problem with the shrinking spars in this glider. So I have, for example, now I'm also doing it now in the avionic factory, and they're preparing called Diana 2 glider, which we use for competition, and it's still very good. So just after some sandpapering and polishing, I think this glider will be perfect for this next event we have next week.
What is the event that you have up that's coming next week?
So this year we have European Gliding Championships. We had a Grand Prix finals, and we had two series of European competitions. One was in Stalowa Wola, which I already won with the Diana 3 glider, which is a new 18-meter class glider based on the concept of the wing of the Diana 2. And it was originally now made in the Czech Republic by a few amateurs. But this is a normal glider with normal spar, normal collections. Everything is very standard, so it will be no problem to accept this glider for gliding community. And it proved to be very nice. Now I'm going back to the Diana 2 15-meter version of, we can say the same wing, but in 15-meter version. It's still from 2000, I think, where it first flew in 2005. And from 2005, it's still in 15-meter the best glider in the world. So,
nice.
So it's a challenge this time because we have new gliders with the number 3, Ventus and JS3. But recently, we didn't see that it's so successful in any competition. Actually, JS3 had a problem with it, and I think it will prove again that the Diana is still the best glider. We already tried it in flat countries. We flew in Australia and last World Gliding Championships, and there was very big hype about the JS3 coming, especially by Qantas Jumbo Jet, to be ready on time in the championships, and it didn't fly better than the Diana 2, and it was a surprise. Maybe it was designed for a very, very good conditions, and we had really average conditions in Benalla instead of fantastic Australian weather. But it also means that if we put a little bit more ballast in the Diana 2, it would be also the same. Because now the biggest difference between those two gliders is just 30 kilos more. So this wing loading of the JS3 is a little bit higher, and that's probably the only reason for why it's a little bit faster on the really good conditions.
I would imagine your schedule keeps you very busy. How many months out of the year are you racing in competition?
The competition is usually I'm at 4 or 5 competitions. This year is a little bit more. And extra to this, I'm trying to go to Kazakhstan, because for the first time in the history there will be a nice glider in this area. And we have fantastic mountains in Central Asia. It's Tian Shan Mountains. And if the glider will be ready, because Shemkir still didn't deliver it, and it's scheduled next week, you never know if it's like that. And we have planned to be in Kazakhstan in 3 weeks, just after the competition in Previtsa. So it's the time is very very short, and there may be a problem with organizing it. And so basically I'm flying 6 months a year.
When you're
usually.
not flying?
When I'm not flying, I do other things, and by profession I'm a medical doctor, so I'm a gynecologist. So I'm going to the, let's call it, surgery, and now usually I'm making the USG scans and such things. And I used to work in the hospital, but this year I have no time for it, so I'm just part-time in the office in local village. But except for this, I do many other things. For example, I have a lot of meetings and lectures. And I'm also making flights for pilots who would like to do it. For example, last week I flew in Germany, which was also a good occasion for me, because next competition is in Germany next year. And we flew on more or less in the same area, so it was a good occasion for me. And so in this moment, I'm very busy.
Yeah, that sounds like you're extremely busy. If I could ask you, what is the biggest obstacle you've had to overcome in flying?
It's money. That's the problem. And, in Poland, we have a problem to get a good glider, because there's only in the national team, which is probably the richest group, and in gliding, we have only maybe 3 gliders which are ready to send it to World Gliding Championships. So it's always a problem to rent the gliders. So basically, I don't have a problem with flying, but I think if you look at the competitions, that psychological problems is the biggest problem. If I have a problem with something or somebody, it just really disturbs. And I'm almost sure when I'm relaxed in the competition, I'm going to doing very well. When there are some problems and or too much stress, for example, I think the competition I didn't win. I was second in the World Gliding Championships in Grand Prix race in Spain 2 weeks ago. I think the problem was too big pressure, and we were really in a hurry. In the beginning, we had a problem with the glider. We had to work with this glider for 2 days. Just a day before, we finished just 1 day before the competition. So it was everything in a huge pressure of time. And I think I was not, if you're too much stressed, your concentration is very focused. And I think I made a mistake the first day, and that was the real problem I lost. But after all, after being the last in the first day in competition, fighting for gold medal in the last day, it's not a bad result, I think.
No, not at all. If I could ask you, what was one of your most, I know you've had a lot of flights, Sebastian, but if you could pick one, what was one of your most memorable flights that you've had?
I think the flight in a wave of Ukraine. We had to cross the borders, which are still a big problem here in Europe. Still, Ukraine is not in the European Union, but it's in Europe. To organize this flight, we started in September. We tried like 5 times to cross the border, and each time there was some problems. And even we were granted the permission by accepting the flight plan, but then when we were just next to the border, they refused to enter. And but after we flew there, we discovered something that was very exceptional in this part of the world. So we had a fantastic wave system, hydraulic jump, and the flight across stretch of Gorgan and East Carpathian Mountains was very fast. It was like 1 hour to get to Romanian border. I would like to be able in the future to fly along those mountains a little bit further into Romania, but in that moment it was not possible to organize. And so even I had a lot of successes in competitions. I'm sure quite often satisfied with what I do, because I know with this data, with this knowledge I had in that moment, I made the best decision. I made everything perfectly, and it's a good satisfaction for the pilot. And but I think those explorative, let's call them, flights are most memorable for me, and I'm happy that I was able to do it like this. Also, the first flight we climbed with wave over Himalayas was something very successful. But in that moment, it was more about the politics and permissions we were given or not. Yeah. But this time in Ukraine, it was more a sports challenge. Of course, we had to stop at the border many times, but that day it was really awful weather on the ground. We started almost climbing through the clouds in the mountains, and immediately we were cut off from the outlanding field. So the only option was to drift downwind and look for some holes in the cloud cover to eventually, just in case, to land out. Yeah. But the flight itself, once we have climbed to 6,000 meters and we got to the place where we wanted to be, there was like in a different dimension. It was also called something like this, like Klaus Ullmann flying in the 4th dimension, because it was like hitting a highway. You immediately speed up and you fly which altitude you want, what speed you want, and that's no problem to follow the airway, which is designed for airliners at this area. And it was one of the problems we also had to face, because we were supposed to fly exactly along the airway, and it was no problem. So it was very, very nice flying, and I will remember it forever. And pictures from that flight are also outstanding. And I've seen such clouds, such lenticular clouds, such a wall of hydraulic jump in Patagonia, but never in Europe. So basically, this was the most memorable flight for me as now.
That sounds very amazing. You know, when we're in the air, as pilots, we do get to see such a different view of the Earth, and that's what I enjoy about it.
Mm-hmm.
Sebastian, I understand you are an author as well. Can you tell me a little bit about some books you've written?
That's a problem. I have a feeling that I should update it and maybe write a little bit more, because I have a lot more observations since then. I flew a lot with other pilots, and I have seen more things, and I have never had a chance to put our views of Himalayas or Carpathian Mountains or Caucasus in that book, and it is interesting. But But also in the technical part about how you fly, and I have some more observation why, for example, people are not successful in thermaling and centering, and why there are some other techniques to fly just straight with the glider. And it's something that has to be updated in these books, but I have no time to do it in the meantime. Basically, the book is one only. There's two parts. One is about how I started to fly gliders, how I got the experience, and about the way. But the second part is more technical about how you fly. And these are some details about flying important, very important for the competitor pilot on the next level. Yeah, not for the pilots that are just trying to fly in thermals. Yeah, this is exactly where you find the thermal when you're flying under the cumulus street, for example. It's how the cumulus streets are organized, and this is such things. And so I tried to make a book for competitors, and I found out that the first year I wrote it, there were some occasions that we had competitions days that if somebody had carefully written the book, he would be much more successful. I have seen that there were some moments that it was exactly what was described in the book. And I don't know, maybe people did, but I think they didn't read it carefully.
What's the title of the book for those that don't know?
A Sky Full of Heat. Okay, so I would have to update a little bit about thermaling itself and some more details about tactics and so. Unfortunately, it has changed the competitions because we have this tracking systems and plans which are available to see live what's the other glider doing. Few years back, we could see the gliders maybe 2 kilometers away. If they're flying a little bit higher, they're more than 2 kilometers, you don't see them usually. These objects on the sky are just too small to trace, and they are not able to distinguish if they are climbing or not. Maybe sometimes you may expect if the glider is higher, he's climbing very well, because it would make no sense to stay in high altitude and climb in a weak thermal. Yeah? But now you can see gliders 20 kilometers away on your computer screen. And that's a huge problem. We have recently huge goggles, huge congestions of gliders in competitions. And I think what was originally in the FLARM system, that it should be in the competition mode or in the stealth mode. So that's not giving the tactical information, only the anti-collision information. And the information about gliders is reduced to 2 kilometers away only. That was okay. But in this moment, they started to use it. And I think it was not a good decision to force people to fly in, I'd say, tourist mode of the FLARM. So it's open, and everybody can know what they are doing, how are you climbing, and where you are, and what's your tail number. And this is awful, because we have had competitions where everybody was waiting for 3 hours on the start line, because everybody knew when he is going to start first, he's a loser. So the tactics for the competition is only to start later on the start, fly behind everybody after the start line. So in the next 2-3 thermals, you will get them, and you're 5 minutes ahead. So this is a problem recently. It's not a problem in the Grand Prix. The tracking on the ground is not helping, but in normal competition, there are some specialized teams, and in some teams we have people with computers on the ground, which each person has one team, one glider in the sky, and he is helping with this glider. So this is something unbelievable how it changed the competition now here in Europe, at least. Yeah, and it is. I think it's something wrong. And I have also observations that young pilots, they don't look out. They are looking only in the computer, on the computer screen. I had an experience flying just a few weeks back. I met a glider. There was a competition in Slovakia, and I was flying a 2-seater in Tatra Mountains. And they flew next to the glider, maybe 100 meters away from this glider, for a long time along the mountains. And it was not behind him. It was like 90 degrees or sometimes a little bit in front of him. And he couldn't see me. he couldn't see me for 5 minutes. So that's how young pilots now are behaving in the air. So this is nightmare, and I think it should be banned to have these flares because they're not.
I agree. We've had many discussions at the club that I'm in about that. People, with their heads in the cockpit with the gadgets rather than looking outside and flying and seeing what's around them. I totally agree with you on that. That is definitely a real problem.
Oh, yeah, it is. It is recently a huge problem. And when I fly, I have sometimes a feeling that I should put my shirt on the instrument panel in front cockpit and to fly with the student like this. Then he would have to fly out.
Yeah. My instructor did that to me a couple times. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to fly gliders, especially in a competition, what is one piece of advice that you would like to give them?
The result itself is not that important. The important thing is how you do it and if you learn from it. And that's why I would recommend to fly not looking at the instruments like a FLARM, but more flying by yourself. Of course, using other gliders is okay, but the gliders that you can see outside from your cockpit. And the other thing is take it seriously. So I have seen many pilots that are able to have good results, but at a certain moment they give up during the competition. And this is not good. And so attitude, it has to be seriously. And I have the feeling that if somebody wants to be a good pilot, he can always he is well motivated to do it. He will find a way to do it. And recently I drove from Germany, and one young pilot from Poland, he just called me and we were talking for about 1 hour, and he had 100 of questions of how to do this, how to do that, how you should thermal, how you fly straight, and we had a nice chat, and I think he's in a good way to become a good glider pilot. So some are just not serious enough, and that's a problem. Then we have many pilots that are starting gliders, for example, in Europe, just to become a commercial pilots, and it's not really a motivation to become a good glider pilot, which is not bad to start with gliding. I agree that to start with glider is a good thing, but their motivation is not to be a good glider pilot. Their motivation is to get some hours, some experience, and just move to a commercial flying with planes. So that's not maybe a good way we should treat gliding. Yeah.
Sebastian, I greatly appreciate you joining us today. Is there anything you would like to add?
We are working with new gliders now. I'm in the avionics factory I mentioned on the beginning. I'm just preparing the Diana 2 glider for the competition in next week. This is the Diana 2. Unfortunately, in last years, it was not a great manufacturer, but this manufacturer has changed now. They bought rights from old owner, from designer of this glider, and now they are going to modify it, and I hope it will be a very good glider. So we are very happy to have a new manufacturer in Poland, and they are now making 3 Diana's 2s for customers already, and they are working with the production of the Diana 3, which after the stage of the prototype, they have to modify it a little bit, and then it will be sold as a serial production glider. It was very good, and we hope for more. Then the plan is to beat the greatest, to beat German manufacturers, the Alexander Schleicher and Schempp-Hirt, and they are in a good route to do it. So I'm very happy to be in this project now. I'm flying this glider since the beginning, and I'm happy that now it's moved a little bit forward, and there's a prospect for building a series of gliders, not only 15 and 18 meter, and also the open class glider with the same concept, which is a little bit different from airfoils that are designed in Germany. If you look at the Ventus 3 and Ventus 2, there is not much difference, and it's almost the same concept. So there was a very conservative approach to design the new glider, and the Diana gliders are different. So it's a little bit better glider for thermaling. the lift coefficients for this airfoils is a little bit higher, then it makes the difference. It's something I'm very happy that we are coming to the market with as a Poland, and I'm a part of this business now.
We are definitely looking forward to hear how Diana 3 does in the future, and looking forward to watching you in your next competitions. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us today, Sebastian. And thank you, each and every one of you, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to listen and help spread the word about soaring. For more information about soaring, you can also check out ssa.org. And while online, check us out, soaringthesky.com. And social media Instagram, you can find us, Soaring the Sky Podcast, as well as Facebook under Soaring the Sky Podcast. We hope to see you this year at Oshkosh. We will be there with the SSA. We're going to be hanging out Friday and Saturday. Of course, the SSA will be there all week. And if you are a glider pilot and you would like to share your story right here on Soaring the Sky, you can get a hold of me at chuck@soaringthesky.com. Love to talk with you. Love to have you on the podcast. We hope you join us next time for another great guest right here on Soaring the Sky.